You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play.
The options market can be a confusing place. Sorting through the daily avalanche of data, alerts, updates, articles, and analysis to find the most important information is an overwhelming prospect. But now you have help. Welcome to the Options News Rundown, the only program that breaks through the noise to bring you the most important news and information from the world of options. Every day, we bring you the top 5 option stories curated by the options experts at theoptionsinsider.com, the premier source for options information. The Options News Rundown is brought to you by Market Taker Mentoring, the leader in options trading education. Get trader education, daily trade ideas, and more with a free 1-week trial of Market Taker Mentoring's Live Advantage Group coaching class by visiting markettaker.com/insider. And now it's time to break through the noise. It's time for your Options News Rundown.
Good morning. Today is Friday, June 28th, 2019. This is your Options News Rundown. I'm Dan Passarelli. Our first story of the day is from investing.com. It's the top 5 things to know in the market on Friday. The first thing to know is the G20 kicks off in Japan. Bilateral meetings are to steal the spotlight. The meeting of G20 leaders is underway in Osaka, Japan, with market focus on bilateral talks on the sidelines of the main event. The undisputed headliners will be U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping at a bilateral meeting that will take place at 11:30 a.m. local time in Osaka on Saturday. That's 10:30 p.m. Eastern this evening. Market focus will be on whether both leaders at least agree to a truce in their current trade conflict, a move seen as essential for making progress towards an eventual deal. Oil markets will also have an eye on a planned meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, which a Kremlin spokesperson said this week was being prepared for Saturday. The two will likely discuss whether and how to extend the current production cut agreement between OPEC and other producers, of which Russia is by far the largest. The second thing to know today is U.S. stocks rise ahead of Xi-Trump meeting. U.S. futures pointed to a higher open ahead of the meeting between the two world leaders. Consumer spending and inflation data for May are due at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, that's out, and will be evaluated for their impact on the Federal Reserve's monetary policy. Markets expect the Fed to deliver its first rate cut since December of 2008 at its July meeting. Personal spending growth is forecast to have picked up 0.4% despite expectations for personal income growth to slow to 0.3%. The Fed's preferred inflation gauge, the Core Personal Consumption Expenditures (PCE) price index, which excludes food and energy, is expected to have risen 0.2% in May, with the annual rate remaining at 1.6%. The Chicago PMI for June will be released at 9:45 a.m. Eastern, followed 15 minutes later by the revised consumer sentiment for the same month from the University of Michigan. On the company front, Constellation Brands will report earnings ahead of the bell, while RealReal will begin trading after having priced its initial public offering at $20, above the $17 to $19 expected range. Elsewhere, European equities moved higher, with Deutsche Bank rising after passing the Fed's stress tests, and Merlin Entertainment plc ADR jumping 14% after being bought by Blackstone and the Legos founding family. Asian shares had more jitters ahead of the Trump-Xi meeting, with China's Shanghai Composite off 0.6% and Japan's Nikkei 225 closing 0.3% lower. The third thing to note today is Apple is under pressure as Chief Design Officer leaves. Shares in Apple fell 1% in pre-market trade on Friday after the company announced that Jony Ive, its chief design officer, is leaving the company. Ive had worked for the company for more than 20 years and was responsible for the look and feel of all Apple products. Ive was reported to have plans to start his own design business called Love From, which the Financial Times said would have Apple as a client. The fourth thing to know is banks splash the cash after passing Fed test. U.S. banks were set to boost sentiment in Friday's trading after they passed the Federal Reserve's stress tests, paving the way for increased dividends. Goldman Sachs shares jumped 2.3% in pre-market trade after the bank nearly doubled its dividend. Bank of America, J.P. Morgan, Citigroup, and Bank of New York Mellon also saw strong gains ahead of the open. And the fifth thing to note today is Boeing confirms likely delay in 737 MAX's return to service. Shares in Boeing slid nearly 3% a day earlier, leading decliners on the Dow after the U.S. Federal Aviation Commission identified a new risk that will have to be fixed before its grounded 737 MAX can return to service. As a result of the finding, a Boeing official reportedly told Reuters that the company now believes it will complete the latest software update by September. Southwest Airlines said Thursday that its 737 MAX airplanes will now stay grounded at least through the end of September. By contrast, United Airlines and American Airlines both currently plan to resume flights in early September. And for our second story, let's look at a follow-up and take a look at the numbers. MarketWatch.com tells us consumers boost spending in May as incomes rise and inflation stays low. Consumer spending rose at a healthy clip in May for the third month in a row, suggesting the U.S. economy is still on solid ground, even as growth has waned. Consumer spending increased 0.4% last month, the government said Friday. That's a tick below the MarketWatch forecast, but the increase in spending in April was doubled to 0.6% from 0.3%, revised figures show. Incomes advanced 0.5% for the second month in a row to help support higher household spending. Inflationary pressures, meanwhile, remained quite low. Although prices rose slightly in May, the pace of inflation over the past 12 months tapered off to 1.5% from 1.6%, using the Federal Reserve's favorite PCE price gauge. That's well below the Fed's 2% target. Americans bought more new cars and trucks, rented more hotel rooms, and spent more on prepared food or eating out. Yet, since incomes rose slightly faster than spending, the savings rate was unchanged at 6.1%. Inflation, as measured by the PCE index, rose 0.2%. Prices, excluding the up and down food and energy categories, also rose 0.2%. The so-called core number is viewed as a more reliable barometer of inflation trends because it's less prone to sharp swings. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is news you can use for today, Friday, June 28th, 2019, your Options News Rundown. I'm Dan Passarelli. Trade smart and have a great weekend.
The Options News Rundown is brought to you by Market Taker Mentoring, the leader in options trading education. Get trader education, daily trade ideas, and more with a free one-week trial of Market Taker Mentoring's Live Advantage Group coaching class by visiting markettaker.com/insider.
preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.